So you're thinking about going to music school. Well, there's a few things you should know first. For starters, there are two very different kinds of music school. You have your traditional music school where you're going primarily for your instrument. You will have to pass tests and auditions to even get into the school. And then there are other music schools that will teach you recording and things of that nature. For the purposes of this video, I'm only going to be talking about the latter of those two. Now, Full Sail isn't just a music school. It's also a place that you learn about film, a place that you learn about video game design, sound design, sports broadcasting even now, I think. There's a plethora of options and curriculums that you could take if you went to go to school there. So I went initially for the recording arts program because I wanted to be working in a recording studio. I had been out playing live. I was kind of on a hiatus actually when I decided to enroll. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I was in my mid-20s and I said, you know what? This sounds like a good idea. I knew somebody that went and they highly recommended it to me because they were very similar in their learning habits. Not so similar in the style of music that we liked, but similar enough as people where he thought I would be a good fit there. Now that being said, before I ever stepped foot on that campus, I had been in recording studios a lot. I've worked with different consoles, I've worked with digital at the time. I grew up tracking to tape. So I was used to that kind of environment and I had a lot more knowledge than I gave myself credit for before I enrolled. Now, I only mention that because I would like to say if you're somebody that was in that kind of skill set, whereas you've been in the studio, you know what a compressor is, you know how routing works, you know what a snake cable is, all sort of just basic things in a recording studio environment, you're already going to be way far ahead of the curriculum. So basically for the first 6 months, it's the absolute bare minimum. I think it would be something that would be good if you had absolutely no experience. I think then it would be a lot more useful, but I felt like I didn't really learn anything. And that's not to say I'm extremely smart or anything like that. I didn't learn much because it was all things that seemed like common sense that I learned my first few times ever going to a studio when I was in my teenage years. So it was nothing really earth-shattering. You do learn a lot of specifics about technique. I think that that's one strong suit. But then again, things that I really learned at the time are all things I could have studied online. Things like microphones and different kinds of microphones, the different patterns of microphones, different placements of microphones. I knew that the best way to experiment with that prior to going to school was to experiment. It's good to have those few mics that you rely on for something like overheads, pencil condensers, a 57 on a guitar cab, a U87 style, or a C414 for vocals, depending on if it's a girl or a guy, and that kind of stuff. But nowadays, with how accessible information is and how expensive it is to go to a school like that, I feel like there are a lot of filler courses that really, they're not exactly worth the price of admission. Now that being said, you get to play in some really, really, really cool studios, and you get to touch and mess around a little bit, not as much as they might lead you on, with some of the really high-end consoles that are available out in the world. Now, when you're in school, you're thinking, this is amazing. I know how to route this SSL console, and I can even work my way around an old Tascam or a Yamaha. I could do anything I want, and I can master the board. The problem is, in theory, that is good, but in practice, every studio is routed so uniquely that what you learned and mastered in one of those recording suites, yeah, the general idea is going to carry over, but you got to learn from scratch all over again once you get in there. And it's not something that is inherently applicable like in other job fields or other kind of vocations. And that's just something I wish that I knew a little bit more about before going in, what to really focus on rather while I was there. Another big positive was you get to work on things that you might not have wanted to work on or tried to work on prior to that. Like for me, sound design and foley stood out as topics that I wouldn't have even told you what foley was. I had no idea until I went to school for it. Well, it was part of the curriculum in the program, but foley is the manufacturing of sounds to make it sound like something that you'd hear in a movie, like a sound replacement. But it's done in very unconventional ways, and it's very, very interesting. If you ever get bored and want something to watch at night, just Google Foley documentary into YouTube, and you will find things that'll be like, wow, I had no idea. And it'll kind of change the way you look at movies and sound effects. And if you don't know anything about music theory, don't worry about that, because you learn at a, not even kidding, like first or second grade level. It is so basic, and it was kind of still my weakest point, I would say, as a musician. Like, I know music theory, but I'm not an expert on it. And when I went in, that was what I was looking forward kind of most to, outside of playing with the expensive consoles and the microphones. But it's such a rudimentary level that if you have a background, again, you're not really going to learn a lot from it. The instructors there are pretty cool, but you can tell that they're kind of just going through the motions. And if you're not familiar with that school, I say that because, quite frankly, they are going through the motions. Every 30 days, they get in a whole new class to redo the entire same curriculum. And that goes on almost endlessly. So imagine it's Groundhog's Day, and you get in a student that really wants to learn. That student is not like the other ones. They really, really, really have a key interest in what you're teaching them. By the end of 3 weeks, maybe you even started to really bond with that student, and you have formed a good relationship as far as being able to teach more than what you're used to just teaching every single month, month in, month out. 1 week after that, boom, done. You're not going to see that kid again, probably, unless he's going to pay you for private lessons. And let's be honest, that's just not going to happen, not on that kind of budget. And I think that's one of my other problems with it. You don't get to really develop that kind of relationships with the people that are teaching you. They are people that have worked to some capacity within some facet of the industry itself. However, with that being said, when you limit it to 4 weeks total, I mean, what do you expect? You have to go through your introductions, your testing phases, your core material. It doesn't leave you a whole lot of time extra to kind of build those relationships. Another cool thing is you get to interact with people and collaborate on things that aren't just in music. For example, one of my best friends was somebody that I met in that school, but they weren't there for music. They're actually there for film. So we ended up shooting music videos and working on, a TV pilot, which I will get to one day. I acted in a TV pilot. It was, oh God, that was an experience. But the whole thing is, like, to me, that was the most tangible, valuable part I got out of all of it, was just the relationships I made with people there and networking, which you can't put a price tag on that. And that's something that is very undervalued by people, and you do kind of have to pay to play. It's just like anything else. Or you move to a city like Nashville or Los Angeles or New York City, which are kind of the hubs for all of these kinds of entertainment production projects. And when you do that, you're also paying to play, because you're going to up your rent cost. You're going to have to try and find different work to supplement you pursuing your passion. It is good to know that from a networking standpoint, you will meet people that inevitably will be connected one way or another back to the, Hollywood or wherever you want to work. And the opportunities are there, whether or not you want to go about it organically or not. I mean, everybody's different. And I think part of the reason that I never ended up going that route is because I refused to not do it organically. I didn't want to, fake relationships with people because I knew who their dad was. That just seems like a weird, awkward shit thing to do. But that's just me. And then we get to the biggest problem of all when it comes to this. When you get out of school, and even if you have your degree and you've mastered consoles and you know everything about microphones and placement and guitars and that kind of stuff, finding a job is extremely difficult. However, this advice does apply if things ever go fully back to normal. I would absolutely just intern. I would go right to a studio. I would pick out one that was close to me or one that seemed, attainable. You don't go right up to Ocean Way Studios and try and get a job there. That's not how this works. For 99.9% of the world, that's not how this works. You have to start somewhere. Start on the ground. Ask questions. Be there for all the sessions. Just don't worry about making money at this point, because this job is not a job that when you graduate school there are a lot of spots for. And the other thing is you have to consider how many people graduate monthly, from just Full Sail alone. How many people graduate annually? How many of those people do I know still work in music at all? How many do I know work in a studio at all? I can tell you that number. One. I know one person that works in a studio that I went to school with. That's it. And that's not to say they weren't ambitious. The majority of the people that I still keep in contact with, they all moved out here too. Everyone took it really seriously. They put in all the work. They tried to, get in on the ground floor. But when you go right into the Lion's Den at something like Los Angeles, it's a different world. And I think kind of that degree in your hands, it can do this. It doesn't happen to everybody. It can give you a false sense of entitlement and a one-up that you think you will have in an interview or trying to get a job in a studio versus somebody who's never gone to school for it or had that kind of training. I just don't think this is that kind of career that is, made for a degree program or something like that. I think the best way to go about it is absolutely just do it organically, locally, and also because studios are run so differently, built so differently, and routed so differently, most importantly. And the clientele is all different too. I mean, the more I think about it, there's just so many things that factor into each specific situation, more so than other jobs. And for me, there is no way I would recommend that you would go to that school. Just not for that price. I mean, if it was maybe a fifth of the price, a sixth of the price, ideally like a tenth of the price is probably what it's actually worth. That would be a lot different story, but you're going to be putting yourself in debt and going into a job market where it is extremely uncertain, even in good times. And right now, these aren't good times for that. So you'd really, really be putting yourself behind the 8 ball there. And those student loans aren't going to go away anytime soon, believe me. I know. But that's pretty much it. I just kind of wanted to give my opinion on Full Sail. I mentioned it in another video and somebody else had asked me about it in a message. So I said, yeah, I could do a little video on that. I have a lot to say, so all done. Leave me a like if you like what I'm doing. Sorry, guys, I'm really tired. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Have you ever gone to one of these schools? Have you ever considered going to one of these schools? I mean, yeah, I don't recommend it. Subscribe if you are not. And I will see you again tomorrow for guitar content. Until then, take care, guys.